Alrighty, good to see you all again for another week. A blustery fall day. A little bit of sun, yes, nice. Okay. A couple or a few things to mention. Um, if you looked at your emails, I mentioned this last week. I sent out an email last week that I was changing the due date for the only paper, from Monday, which was yesterday, to Wednesday, which is tomorrow, November 12th. And so I sent out an email to that effect. I want to, I appreciate that one of my students contacted me almost immediately because I did not notice this, that in doing this, I was using, reusing a previous email when I'd done this before. And I thought I changed all the information. It's one of those things, you look and look and look, and then the glaring error is right there the whole time, but your brain never sees it, So I'm like, I always do this and apologize. So I sent out a correction saying that email was wrong, and I sent out a corrected email. So this is the corrected email or the corrected information that is in the syllabus as well. So it's all correct now, okay? But my first email was wrong. So if you did submit the paper by yesterday, 11:59 p.m. yesterday, then you'll get the 3 points if you did it. If not, then you won't. Okay. If you did get it in by yesterday and decide that maybe you want to make a few changes to it before Wednesday, then you can and just resubmit it. You'll still get the 3 points because you had it in on time, the original date. But if you didn't have it in yesterday, you're not getting the 3 points. All right. Just brutal honesty, Miss Crystal, Not to be clear, because I don't want anyone to be okay. So tomorrow, now, Mr. McKillop informed me, this is, again, my mistake, which I forgot to do with Canvas, is that I have to just extend the date to Wednesday. It's a simple thing. I forgot to go into the settings for the paper. It didn't affect anything for you submitting up until Monday. And it doesn't affect you for submitting to Wednesday either, because you have until Wednesday. So, don't worry, please don't, I understand, it might show that you weren't submitted and it will affect your grade in gradebook or show a 0 or something like that. I don't know why it's been doing, now that I have no control over, and Canvas has been doing that. I had an issue maybe in another class, I think, but I know I had an issue this semester where it used to be that it would just mark your grade late. It's supposed to mark it as late, and shows a little blue box with, a hyphen, nothing. There's no information because nothing's been submitted. No grade's been given. It's just late. When a grade is given, the lateness will be applied. But for some reason, Canvas has started putting zeros in, and I don't know why. I've asked, no one can tell me why. Canvas sucks. Okay. So that's not my mistake. That's just Canvas simply sucks. It's a terrible learning management system. Anyways, enough preaching. Anyways, so here you go. So you got it. So you got until tomorrow night to get it done. If you haven't gotten it done, go to the library, check out some reserve books, take a look. Okay. Look at the indices of the book. If you don't know what to look for, look in the back of the book for indices or subject matter, and try to find something that applies to what you're talking about. Look in the table of contents, see if there's a chapter that applies. Yeah, obviously, if you haven't done it yet, you've waited till the end, then, it's going to be pressure to find something, but, you got to do it. Or I'm asking you to do it. 3 sources cited 3 times in some way, clearly cited, so I know that you used the book. Please. Any questions? Anything I'm not clear? Mr. Wojciechowski, you okay? But
for each book.
Oh yeah, you should have at least 1 citation from each book. No, 3 books, 1 citation each. That's all I ask. If you want to do more, that's fine. You don't have to. The minimum is 3, just to show me that you've used each book at least once. So hopefully this has taken the pressure off some people, but I don't know. If you haven't gone to the library yet and even cracked one of the books, then nothing I can do about that, my friends. Okay. Native American Heritage Month. This beautiful Indian man, Native American man, indigenous, his name was Nicholas Black Elk. Nicholas Black Elk. And he lived from 1863 until 1950. 1863 until 1950. He was born, I'm assuming he was born, I wasn't there, in what was then the Wyoming Territory, what later became the state of Wyoming. So it was not part of the United States at the time. I found out from a student, I asked the question in the last class, so Wyoming became a state only in 1890. In 1890, the Wyoming Territory was organized as a state. So technically, it was not the United States, but it became the United States. It certainly was owned by the federal government. It was a territory under the administration of the federal government. And if anyone deserves to be called an American, I think the Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, although indigenous is even also kind of a weird word because they did come here, but they came here first and settled here many tens of thousands of years before any other human beings did, but certainly Europeans. So if anyone deserves that moniker of American, it's certainly the native peoples, even though they weren't technically native, they moved here like us, but okay, settled here. So he certainly, I think he qualifies, definitely, for those two reasons. He's a Native American, first of all, and then was born in the state of Wyoming, what became the state of Wyoming. He was not raised a Christian or a Catholic for apparently much of his life, 1863. So, yeah, I'm looking at my dates here. I guess near his 50s he became Catholic. But anyways, and he, as a younger man, he fought at the Battle of Little Bighorn. He was a Lakota Indian, the Oglala Lakota Indians, which are out west in that area, the Lakotas. And my niece is Native American, but I'm not, so, I couldn't tell you all the different distinctions between the different tribes and whatever, but Lakota, there are whole groups of different Lakotas. He was Oglala Lakota. I think they're also sometimes called the Sioux. And they might be exactly the same. If someone wants to get an extra credit point, you could fact check me on that just to see if Sioux is another name for the Lakota. But anyways, that also seems to come up. So I just mentioned it. I could be wrong until someone fact checks me. Anyways, the Battle of Little Bighorn. Has anybody heard about that? The Battle of Little Bighorn? Nope. General George A. Custer. General Custer? Anyone? 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 Battle of Little Bighorn? No? Doesn't ring a bell? You mentioned it in your American history class, maybe, at least once? Huh? Sounds. I never saw the show F Troop on TV back in the 60s, 70s, I think it was the late 60s. And maybe it's streaming now, based on the U.S. cavalry. Comedy, not very funny in my. I can watch it, I know about it. The Battle of Little Bighorn. Yes. General Custer. Nobody. Doesn't ring any bells. Any memory? Miss Snyder? What do you know, Miss Snyder? You've heard of it. Okay, well, that's something. That's something. Yes, the U.S. cavalry, which was established to pacify the West, the Western territories. Okay. Pacify them for whom? Pacify them for whom? Is the those. Who's out there? I'm telling you. That's my way. Who was out west in that time? We encountered. Who was living there? Out west in the, well, actually throughout most of North America. We pushed a lot of them out west, but yeah. No, not coming in? Mr. I got you, Mr. McMaster, Mr. Cumming, not Mr. Cumming, Mr. Barnett. Native Americans, indigenous peoples were out there. Where do they need to be pacified from? What do you think, Mr. McMaster? What do you think the Oglala Lakota needed pacification for? Pacification for? Yeah. Why do they need to be pacified? What about land? We, America. From whom? Yeah. So we send armies. We send cavalry was part of the army. Went out there on horses, that's what was cavalry. Riding around on their horses, enforcing the treaties that we had with the various Indian nations, and they were nations. We didn't treat them as conquered peoples. We treated them as, did treat them as original landowners. We treated them as almost like countries. They were nations. And so the government would make treaties with them, setting the boundaries of their nation and their rights within the federal government. Until, of course, we found like gold and, we needed the water, the water. We needed to take over the river so we'd have fresh water for maybe a local city or something. Then the treaty was rewritten. Federal government decided on its own that, no, that piece of land where all that gold was found, uranium or whatever, you don't have that anymore. We're redrawing the lines. Of course, it's a treaty between two nations, right? The nation, whatever it is, and the federal government, our nation, right? Don't both parties have to have a say in the treaty that they're signing, that they're making? Not in this case. Not when it comes to it. Nope, just took it. Just redrew the lines. Not yours anymore. So, people are like, if they just let us take their land, what are you going to do? Well, they didn't just let us take their land. Throughout the whole 1800s, there was what was called the Indian Wars. Various Indian tribes rise up and revolt against the federal government doing these things to them. Even in one case, the Cherokee won in the Supreme Court against the order of the federal government. Went all the way to the Supreme Court. They won, surprisingly. For the 1800s, a bunch of white guys on the Supreme Court sided with the Cherokee Indian. That was during the time of our buddy Andrew Jackson, the guy in the $20 bill. God bless. The $20 bill, that guy, $20 bill guy. One of those Jacksons or Benjamins. That's $100. Jacksons are the 20. Lincoln's the father. Yes, President Jackson said, well, that's the Supreme Court's decision. Let the Supreme Court enforce it. But he refused to enforce the decision. Interesting. No kings, right? No kings. Yeah, well. Americans don't know American history. Stuff like this has happened before. Usually to people with different skin colors or ethnicities. And it happened to them. So they had a battle. The Lakota Indians got together at this place called Little Bighorn, which I think is in the Dakotas. I'd have to look. Anyways, and this guy, General Custer, who's kind of a flamboyant general, kind of arrogant, went there to fight them. I guess he thought it was going to be a pushover, the U.S. cavalry against a bunch of Indians with their bows and arrows. Except when he showed up, the Indians were there to play. En masse, they were there. And Custer's troops got surrounded and then massacred at the battle. Maybe there were some survivors. I think there were a few, but most Custer and others were killed by the Indians. And this, our friend Nicholas Black Elk, was there. So who knows how many people he killed in that battle, or what he did. Anyways, he was a medicine man in his community, which is, another term for a shaman that they in religious studies speak. A person who has a special charism or charisma, a certain kind of can plug into the spiritual world to usually cure illnesses. That's usually what shamans are. People go to shamans for. They think someone's sick and they need a cure. And of course, there were no hospitals 100,000 years ago or whenever. So, you want to feel some sense that you could get a healing. And maybe in some cases you did for some reason from these people. So for Native Americans, we call them medicine men or medicine man or medicine woman. In religious studies, it'd be a shaman. Anyways, so he did that in his community. He married, and in 1904, his wife became a Catholic. She heard the gospel, and she decided to convert to Catholicism. He did not. His wife was Catholic until her death, which was sometime after 1904. I don't know when. Well, it had to have been before 1932, so within that range of years. But after she did die, he did decide to become a Roman Catholic. So Black Elk became Catholic sometime after 1904. And he kind of mixed and matched his Catholic faith with his Lakota religious practices as well. Okay, he didn't see, how his duties as a medicine man necessarily contradicted some of his Christian beliefs or Christian duties. That could be a little controversial, I think. A little bit controversial. Nevertheless, who am I to judge? Anyways, he seems to have still been a holy man. He came to prominence, or people kind of became famous in a way in the 1930s. In 1932, someone wrote a book about him, talked to him, spoke to him, and published a book called Black Elk Speaks. And he talks about, being an Indian in America and some of his religious experiences and stuff. 2016. Finally, 2016, the Diocese of Rapid City, South Dakota, which I visited once. Archbishop Chaput. Anyone remember Bishop Chaput from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia? Was the Archbishop here until a few years ago? Bishop Chaput. What's his first name? Charles? I think it's Charles Chaput. No. Never went to a Catholic mass and they were praying for Bishop Charles. God bless you. No? Don't remember that? Maybe at your confirmation, Bishop Charles showed up. Well, maybe he wouldn't show up. Maybe one of the other bishops in Philadelphia would come. Anyways. Yeah, I met him. Met him there. Long time ago. He wasn't a bishop then. Oh, he's the Bishop of Rapid City. Actually, no. Was he even the bishop then? Or was he? Yeah, no, I think he was bishop then. He was Bishop of Rapid City, South Dakota, Diocese of Rapid City. And he is part Native American as well. I don't know which kind, but he is part Native American. So anyways, whatchamacallit. So apparently I'm assuming, I don't know for sure unless someone wanted to fact check me on this, I'm assuming that the Wyoming Territory included the Dakotas at the time. That's why the Diocese of Rapid City, South Dakota was able to claim Black Elk and to open the cause for him. And so he is at the beginning stage. He's servant of God, Nicholas Black Elk. And I ask, servant of God, Black Elk, please pray for us in this school, in this great country that we kind of have because of his people, and also for his people, the Native Americans who are living in the United States of America, that they may be blessed by God. And amen. Okay. Now, quiz number 4 will be coming up in a couple of weeks. And you'll notice there are a lot of readings from bins there. So, I would just suggest that you do them because they will come up on the quizzes. Whenever there's like a mistake in the book, I do want to point it out. And I think is it bins chapter 10 that's coming up? I don't know if there were any mistakes in chapter 10. I just want to see my notes. Oh, yeah, there is a mistake. So I think that's in chapter 10. And I did hand out the schedule last week, yes? I handed out the schedule, the revised schedule. I want to check this, please. Yeah, chapter 10. On just the beginning of the chapter, page 69, he makes a mistake. He talks about the earliest fragments of the canon, the earliest fragments of writing that we think are from the Bible, at least the Old Testament Bible, the Old Testament canon, yes? Which of course would be older than the New Testament, earlier. But the earliest parts of the Jewish canon, we might say, are probably to be found in a poem, a song that's recorded in the book of Exodus, chapter 15. And he says, the earliest fragments of writing still present in our Bible, it's page 69, like the poetic song of Miriam in Exodus 15, probably go back to about the 12th century BC. So that'd be the 1100s. Okay, that's interesting. I've heard other scholars argue that the Song of Deborah, which is in the book of Judges, is actually the earliest piece of Hebrew literature that's been copied down, but he's saying the Song of Moses, okay? But notice he says it's the Song of Miriam, this woman Miriam, and that is a mistake. That is wrong. It is the Song of Moses, the prophet, Moses the lawgiver. Miriam does, at the end of the poem, sing her own song as well, a little verse, but the whole thing is attributed to Moses. Just want to make that correction in your book. It's a little mistake. Okay, where are we here? Talking about sources of authorities, tradition, and magisterium. Where are we here? I don't know that I'm going to do. I did experience. I believe oh, wait. I might be on to faith. Okay. It's talking about reason, intellect, or vision. Where did I stop? Oh, that's weird. Where did I stop? So I talked about the catechism. I finished talking about the catechism. I talked about experience. Yes. Huh. That can't be right. Wait a second here. What's the last thing you have in your notes, Miss Snyder, from Thursday? What's the last thing I said, please? Experience? Really? That's as far as I got? Wow. I talk too much, Mr. Lebedinsky. Okay, bye. Experience. I'm done with that. I'm going to move on to faith. I've talked about reason. Okay, the only thing I want to, so don't worry about Vatican I. If I don't go over it, then it's, even though it's on the PowerPoint, unless it's mentioned in the readings, like in Vince's book or something, which I don't think he does mention Vatican I, don't worry about it, okay? Vatican I, as you might know, remember from Vatican II, we talked about Dei Verbum, the Second Vatican Council. This was the first one that was held at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City in the late 1800s, 1869 to 70. And it addressed questions about like revelation and stuff like that. How can we know about God? How can we know the truth about the spiritual life? And anyways, because there were different theories, and some people thought it's all reason and rationalism. There is no place for faith. If it cannot be rationally demonstrated, then it's always suspect. Faith is always then suspect. In fact, faith is not even based on reason. It's something completely other that you might do. Okay? There are others who kind of reacted against that movement by emphasizing faith, saying, well, reason can only do so much. There's only so much we can know or learn. About life, ultimately to live in this life and even the next life, you just kind of have to believe it. You just have to have faith. If you have don't even need to look for rational reasons for faith. Religion's more of a feeling, okay? If it gives you a good feeling, then it gives you a lift in your shoes, one might say, makes you kind of put a smile on your face, then okay, it has meaning for you. Faith. And then, of course, the Pope comes in and the bishops of the Catholic Church in Vatican I to say, you're both wrong. You're both wrong. Reason and faith go together. They are not opposed from each other. And we know that from our experience because, we reason, but we also have to trust. Trust and thinking just because you like to think about things and think things through doesn't mean that there aren't points when you have to make a decision to trust. Trust either what you've experienced or trust other people's experience until you find they're untrustworthy. And then you might have to rethink. It's not a one-time process. The same thing with trust. You might believe something because you thought the information was trustworthy, but then you find other information which seems to be equally trustworthy or even more trustworthy, which causes you to question. So you have to rethink. Do I still trust this information? Okay. That's one of the, I don't know, has anyone ever bumped into like Mormon missionaries? Seen the guys in the bicycles with the white shirt and the black, or they also have women, sisters. The elders are the men. Have you talked to them at all? Or try not to. Why? What's wrong with them? No need to talk to them. Okay. I understand. Maybe you don't want to get into a comment. I like it. They're usually young guys, nice guys. All right, well, they tried to convert me a number of times. Obviously, didn't take. But I learned a lot about what they believe. But one of their, one of their missionary tactics is, they get you their scripture, the Book of Mormon. I should say, it's not their only sacred writing, but it's the one they hand out. They don't hand out Bibles, although they do read the Bible too. And if statistics are to be believed, they know the Bible better than most Christians. Anyways, so they give you the Book of Mormon and tell you to read it and pray about it. Usually, almost their spiel, read it and pray about it. You see what the Lord, what God moves you, and how God moves. And it's true. It's true. Okay. Which is, it's a kind of, as I said, it's a tactic. And I know that can sound negative, but, I don't know how else to describe it. Because it is kind of, in a way, sneaky. Because it almost makes you feel like bad if you, did you read it? Did you read it? Yeah, I read it. Well, let's say I read it and none of it seemed trustworthy to me. I didn't believe in it. Just from reading it, I could tell I don't believe in this. Because sometimes you can. This doesn't make any sense to me. I can't believe this. But did you pray about it? No, I didn't have to pray about it. I read it. I read it. It makes, I even went on the internet and looked some stuff up about the history of the Book of Mormon. Where does it come from? What's the background? Okay, Yeah, but did you pray about it? So it's like, if you didn't pray about it, somehow you got, at least for me, maybe not for other people, it makes you almost feel guilty, like, okay, because I didn't pray about it, But also, I have beliefs too. They already get me kind of questioning my own beliefs. Why do I have to pray about it if I don't believe in it? I mean, you want me to believe in it, but if I'm comfortable with my own belief, why am I asking God again? Oh, God, did you send another book down from heaven which tells a different story? I mean, for that matter, I might as well, Muslim missionaries can do the same thing. Well, they do. Read the Quran. See how beautiful it is. See how its language is, how its teachings are. You clearly see that it's from God. All right, fine. Some people are like that with the Bible. You know, I have a beautiful book. All right, it is. You know, until you read it in the original languages and find out that, well, before some of the Greek sucks, and some of the Greek's very pretty, very good, written by literate people. Some is not. Some of the Hebrew is very nice. Well, Hebrew in general is not trying to denigrate Hebrew as a language, but it's a simpler language. Okay, it reflects that culture of where it comes out of, which were not a group of philosophers. That doesn't mean they're stupid. Saying that there's practical. The words, there's like one word for something, not a million words. They weren't like the Greeks who were philosophizing, making distinctions. Like this word we use, and off of this one word we build all sorts of other words. So it can get a little bit boring sometimes in linguistic manner of speaking. And I had to learn Hebrew, or I did learn Hebrew a little, so I know something. But still, whatever. And some of the Hebrew in the Bible is nice. Some of it's just not nice. It's just, it's not good Hebrew. It's not written very well. So, I mean, I don't judge a book on its literary beauty. Some of it is nice if the Bible has some really beautiful passages, and it does. But there's beautiful passages. I've read parts of the Quran, and yeah, there are parts of it that are quite beautiful. They sound beautiful to me. I've read parts of the Book of Mormon. Some of them are quite fascinating, interesting to me. It's a bit repetitive, a lot of, and it came to pass this, and it came to pass, and it's like every other statement is, it came to pass, came to pass, came to pass, etc. and so forth. Okay, fine. But some parts of it are interesting. So yeah, okay, faith, all right, I might be moved, but, maybe I'm moved to learn more about it, learn more about the book. And then, so I trust it. I start talking to the missionaries. Yeah, I'm moved. Just tell me more about it. I'm moving in the direction of faith. I like the book. I like the story. Okay, in the Book of Mormon, which is basically about Jesus coming to visit Indians in North America, in a nutshell. All right, which is appropriate for Native American Heritage Month, right? Jesus fly. They see Jesus fly over in the sky. The Indians, the ancient Native American, plops himself down and basically preaches the gospel. Don't crucify him again, thank God. The Indians were quite nicer to Jesus than we were. But some of them accept him and some of them don't. Anyways, so that's the story of the book in a nutshell. So, yeah, but I might start doing Book of Mormon studies. As I said, go online. Start reading about the history of it. I'm interested. Where did this come from? And I start finding information about it. It's like, oh, wait a second. I'm not going to get into that because it's not like an anti-Mormon rant. I'm just giving this as an example. I'm finding people I seem to trust, who seem to know things, who are saying, well, it's a nice book, but it's a piece of literature. But it's just that, it's a piece of literature that a guy who, farm boy, farm guy, farmer in New York City, or New York State, rather, in western New York State, wrote in the early 1800s. And people came to believe that it was some kind of divine revelation. Okay, I could still believe it is. If I still want to make that act of faith, I can say, okay, I'll trust the elders of the Mormon Church more. I find them more trustworthy. I see how happy they are. They seem good people, and they believe in this. So, okay, I'll think about it and think, yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, that's probably a good way to kind of promote your product. But faith, yeah, that would be an example. Like for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they're a lot of emphasis on the faith element. when it comes to certainly the Book of Mormon, but other things. Not that they're not thinkers as well, but when they try to promote their scriptures or the authority of their prophets, like the prophet Joseph Smith Jr. founded them, if they don't really make rational arguments, I find, when I've had conversations with them, there are no real rational arguments. It's more faith stuff. About, to believe in Joseph Smith Jr., what a great guy he was, great prophet of God. Okay, yeah, maybe he was. All right. I'm not doubting that. It might have been same thing with Muhammad. If you talk to Muslims, Muhammad was, such a great guy, and he was the this and that and the other great virtues and perfections. Okay, yeah, maybe he might have been a very great man to me. Nice guy. But if I think about his message and I'm like, okay, but where's Jesus fit into all of this? Because I believe in Jesus. All right. So I'm already I'm making a faith thing. But I'm thinking about it. Okay, so faith and reason are not opposed, and they should go together. And in fact, when they don't go together, that's when you get distortions. That's when you get dangerous, when people are thinking more with their hearts than with their brains, or when they're only listening to their brains and they forget the heart. They go together. And if they go together properly, then there shouldn't be a contradiction. But there are contradictions. Well, usually things are out of whack. People were told something. Usually it's the faith problem. People were told something. You went to CCD or you went to Bible camps, or confirmation class. The priest or the nun or the Catholics who were running it, gave you, told you things about the Bible and what to believe about the Bible. And I've gone to look like you're about to hack something. You look like you're a hacker. Or a monk, I should say. Ever thought of becoming a monk? Benedictine or maybe Eastern. You like the beard. Eastern monks, long hair and a beard. It's very nice. Pray all day. Make wine, cheese. Maybe. But the Eastern monks do pray a lot. All day. I mean, how often can you talk to God? No, he's not that interested, is he? Is he? Maybe. You're not sure? Okay. We're not sure about you, God, how interesting you are, but apparently not that interesting. Yes. Go by the evidence. Anyways, what was I talking about? Faith. So yeah, you take it on faith because you think they know. The priest knows he's wearing a collar, or the seminarian, who's hanging out in the parish for the summer, or the nun because she's wearing, if she's wearing her veil or her uniform. Not all do, but so you take that as a sign of authority, right, Ms. Cobb? Trustworthy. I know probably a lot of you signed up for this class because it fit your schedule or whatever. Just give it to you, maybe. But maybe some of you, took a look at who I was and they saw, okay, Matthew Dunn, PhD. Oh, okay. He's got a PhD. Maybe if I had an MA after my name, Master of Arts, you might be like, I'd rather have, it's kind of like when you go to the emergency room, I don't want the medical student in her third or fourth year treating me, I know they have to learn, but keep them away from me. I want, then sometimes the doctors will know better, but give me the doctor, I want a real doctor. So some people are like, no, I want a real PhD. Doesn't really mean much. I gotta be honest with you. It really doesn't. Just means I know how to cover my butt if I make a mistake. Talk my way out of it. Anyways, so I have faith. You trust them. But then you get to a class like this, and we went over the Bible. And maybe I gave you kind of like a little crash course. And maybe maybe a lot of the stuff was like, I never heard this. The priests preach at church like every Sunday on the Gospels, and they talk about them like, they're from these people, like they were right there watching Jesus writing stuff down. I watched The Chosen, went to your youth group, and the youth group pastor or the priest stuck in the DVD for The Chosen, and holla, anyone, man? And apparently, they have St. Matthew writing down everything Jesus says. I haven't watched it. I've been told this by people who have seen it. I've seen bits and pieces on YouTube, and frankly, didn't want to see it anymore. No, I just didn't. It's it's a little too Hollywood for me. It's a little. No, I don't like it. Anyways, nevertheless, and then you get to a class like this, and I'm telling you that, like, Mark, who's that? Luke, who's that? We don't know. Probably not eyewitnesses. Matthew and John, maybe. Maybe. But that's a big maybe. And we ultimately can't really know. We don't have any hard proof. And that can shake people, their faith. Because the faith has been kind of working. They're taking that trust, but that's out of whack. The reason hasn't been going. They haven't thought about these things yet. And that's dangerous because I know, talking about PhDs, I know my people, I know my tribe. And there are people, who, there are people who will use their knowledge for their own devices. Bart Ehrman, he's a great New Testament scholar. I've seen he's all over YouTube and stuff like that. Very famous. I mean, famous. I'd say famous, but famous in my field. You probably haven't heard of him, I'm imagining, or maybe you have, or at least seen him. But I read a book that he wrote, fascinating book on the existence of Jesus, whether Jesus existed or not. And I remember he says in the book, because he teaches down in North Carolina at a state college, he teaches New Testament studies. Teaches it not religiously, just like literature. And he said, it's the South, right? It's North Carolina. It's the Southern United States. So you get a lot of religious, especially, people from like fundamentalist, conservative Bible churches that, they think, oh, wow, course on the New Testament. It's all about Jesus. I know Jesus. I've been to Bible study. This will be great. And they come into his course, and it's like, wait a second. Paul didn't write that. Mark didn't write that. The Exodus maybe didn't happen. And they get all flustered. And in the book that Did Jesus Exist is the name of the book, that Ehrman wrote, he said, people think because I'm an atheist and a New Testament scholar, but I'm an atheist. He doesn't say he's an atheist, but he says it other places. Or not a believer anymore, although he was raised Christian. They think that that's my game, that I'm there. I get joy out of tearing people's beliefs down, right? That's my game. And he said, no, that's not it at all. I don't do that. I'm just going where the scholarly consensus leads me. I'm giving you the facts that all New Testament scholars think. This isn't Bart Ehrman's attack on Christianity or the Bible. You look at other New Testaments, go to other schools, even religious schools, be taught the same thing, blah, 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 blah. But then he adds, I guess he couldn't help himself, he does get pleasure in the case of those conservative Bible Christians, because that's what he was growing up. And he does like to challenge them. So be careful. Be careful. I know more than you, Mr. Seraphine, at least on this topic. I don't know everything, but I know a lot. I certainly know more. And I can manipulate you with the information. All right? So just be careful about that. All right? You're trusting me, faith, but always make sure your reason is also working. Have questions. Look it up if it sounds fishy. If you find over and over again that what your professor or someone else is telling you is true, it's substantiated, okay. Still doesn't mean you have to believe it. A consensus is a consensus. It's just a large group of people think this. Yeah, okay. And large groups of people can be wrong. That's a logical error, appealing to the majority. Okay? They can still be right. It can be an indication of rightness, but it can also be an indication, it can indicate nothing, The earth goes around the sun, whether everybody on the planet believes that or not, you know? So be careful. You hope that I'm being honest with you. You hope that someone is being honest with you. But when you ask questions and you think about it, okay, then you might have to bring it back to your faith. So they go together. They're not in opposition. It's not an opposition like I've told you I've told you stuff about the Bible that doesn't work, right? And weird stories that are in the Bible and stuff. And people are like, I didn't know that was there. Some guy cuts up his girlfriend into 12 pieces, Mr. Seraphine. Why would God do that? Yeah. That's not a contradiction or a problem. I mean, it's there, all right? What it's contradicting is your faith, what you were told. And maybe what you were told was untrustworthy. It's just been passed on, okay? It's been passed on from people's experience. That's what my priest told me when I was in confirmation class. Paul wrote all the letters, no doubt. Okay? So they should go together. And the church teaches this. The two go together. At Vatican I, again, I'm cramming this down in, but at Vatican I, it said officially that you can't get rid of either or because God created us with an intellect. An intellect, Ms. Tran, intelligo, to understand, right? He made us to understand, but he also gave us a will to make choices. That's where belief comes in. To choose to follow our understanding as best we understand it, which sometimes might be wrong. But sometimes might actually be wrong and right. Right? I told you about, does the sun move, right? Or is the sun stationary? Well, yes, it is, but no, it's not. So, yeah, the people in the Middle Ages who thought, yes, the sun is stationary, were wrong, doesn't move, because, of course, we're going around it. It's the point that we're going around. So in that sense, but they were wrong in the sense, or they were right that it doesn't move, I should say, but they were wrong in the sense that they thought the sun was actually moving, physically moving. And now modern science is like, no, that was wrong. Well, modern science, Galileo in the 1600s were like, and other people, Nicholas Copernicus, were like, no, it seems like the sun is stationary and we're the ones moving around it. But now we know but they didn't know about galaxies and stuff like that. So they were right and wrong at the same time, because now we know the sun is moving through the galaxy, as well as being a stationary point around which our planet. It's both. How do we know? Whoops. Okay, well, I'm going to get into that. Where's Revelation? Oh, here's Revelation. Now, faith. Faith is simply trust. It's just a fancy theological word for believing in something to be true about reality because we've experienced it or because someone has told us about it. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. Until you get contrary experience, that's how we operate. It's just how we have to operate, right, Ms. Casada? Yeah. You know? I mean, I trust Taco Bell when their website tells me they don't put sand in their meat. No, I'm just saying. You heard this? Ever hear this? It's like an urban legend. Taco Bell puts sand in their meat. Yeah. Taco Bell even has a whole page devoted to these urban legends about Taco Bell. When I looked at it, sand in it. Okay. And I'm reading the Taco. So, okay, I'm going to trust them. I'll keep eating I won't eat Taco Bell. Garbage. But anyways, I eat fast food. You wouldn't believe it for my girth, but I don't eat fast food. It's garbage. I think it's garbage. You don't have to trust me on that. If you love it, make your choice, rational choice. But anyways, yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'm not likely to start eating Taco Bell, but it makes me feel better that, okay, Taco Bell denies that they put sand in the meat that they put in their tacos. Okay, good, I trust them. Then I'm looking at the answer and it's like they use some chemical name. We do put this. I thought it was sodium chloride or something. We don't put sand in. for texture's sake, so that the meat doesn't clump up, we put in this, but we don't put in sand. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I'm not a chemist, so I didn't, know what the chemical name was. I was curious, so I highlighted it, right-clicked, searched on Google, and guess what it was? Guess what it was, Ms. Mackerley? Chemical name for sand. They just used the chemical name. We're not putting sand in. We're putting in, what's it? Wink. It's sand. It's sand. It's like you ever get tripped up by, oh, by the way, I was thinking of sending out an email to students, but I thought I'd get in trouble. I'd get fired. People will be able to listen. I want to warn you that they're starting to put this by state law, Pennsylvania state law, Wood University in their, the water system, they have to put dihydrogen monoxide, this chemical dihydrogen monoxide, which is totally untested. I mean, you may have heard that the government does put fluoride in the water. That's true. It's good for our teeth and stuff like that. But obviously they clean, but they're putting this chemical dihydrogen oxide, which has not been tested. They have no idea what the health benefits are, but they're going to do it because they're required. The state of Pennsylvania says yes. You have to do it. And if people pay for their water, it has to be in there. But, what do you think, Mr. McMaster? What are your opinions on that? You don't have any idea? I've heard of it. I don't know. It's untested. They're using us as guinea pigs. So you have to trust your government that you trust dihydrogen oxide. What do you think, Ms. Taylor? Think that's a good or bad thing? Think they should leave it out? You think they should leave it out? Well, maybe it has health benefits. What do you think, Ms. Caesar? What if it has health benefits? Should they still, should they be required? Should it be a choice of whether you want this chemical in your water? You think so? You think you should have that choice? Probably. Did you play soccer this weekend? Because I watched part of the game. You guys are playing women. No, they showed something. It was the lady soccer playing. You guys were playing. But I guess it might have been Marymount. Were they in white? Did they have white uniforms? I was looking for it. I looked for my students. What do you think, Mr. Wachikowski? You for or against it? For it. You're for it. Why? Think it'd be good? You don't know. So an untested chemical, just put it into the water.
Well, they have to get it tested to get it.
How do you know that?
Or the FDA.
Well, but this is the state of Pennsylvania.
It still has to get tested.
You think so?
Yeah, that's the company you tested it.
All right. So the FDA approved it, said, okay, dihydrogen oxide is safe for consumption. What will they say? Grass. Generally regarded as safe. It's very distinct. They call it grass. Generally regarded as safe. It's not safe very much, is it? It's generally regarded as safe. Well, what does generally mean? Generally regarded by whom? What's your definition of safe? It only kills 5% of people? 2.5% of people? 1% of people might die from it? So it's safe? Okay. Dihydrogen oxide. Not sure. Yeah, dihydrogen. Huh? Think so? Why? This is a chemical name. Yes, Ms. McMaster.
It's more about hydrogen monoxide. 200 and one.
Oh, yeah, dies too, right?
One outside.
Monoxide. Oh, monos, right? Oh, I see. So they're putting water in the water. Yeah. Oh. Okay. All right. All right. Forget about that. I'll edit that part out later. It won't show up on the test. Let's see. Trust, faith, belief. You believe in something that someone tells you because he has a PhD after his name, or he's older gentleman. It's kind of roly-poly and friendly and jokey. So yeah, he wouldn't lie to me. Guy moving the cards around on the table on the streets of Philly, those guys. There's a winner every now and then, right? Had to make it look at least somewhat possible to win. Now, of course, there are Bud Guy's friends who are lurking around who, will root you for your winnings if you ever win. Or if you ever point out that he's cheating, see, he put the card there. You get someone who's like, I don't know, a wannabe magician, like, yes, he palmed the card. Get in front of him. Don't get between a man and his meal, my friend. They'll take you aside and educate you on street etiquette. So trust. You trusted me. I trusted Taco Bell, even though they were a little deceptive, right? I think that's deceptive. Maybe you don't think so. I thought that's deceptive. Using the chemical name rather than just the common name that people use. Okay? Trust. That's what faith is. Okay? Someone tells me about reality. And in this sense, I'm using faith as the specific trust that we have in God. Who, number one, God is truthful by nature. And number two, he doesn't deceive us. He's not deceptive with us, nor can he be deceived about reality. No one can deceive God. I hope, Mr. McMaster. How did you know that God, if you were to believe, I don't know if you believe in God or not, I'm not asking you. But if you took the definition of a God, is truth part of that definition for you, that the God should be truthful?
Yeah.
Why?
I would hope to would be truthful, be telling the truth and not.
And never lie to you. Well, so there's the possibility of lying. So God might not be all truthful. 100%?
Would accept it.
Why not?
Because I would think that there was somebody that is.
Well, if there's no other alternative, or if you just believe in one God.
And that God is deceitful.
Yeah. Why not?
Because it's one of the characteristics of God and knowing and
Knowing was does it tell you all you know or tell it accurately? All truthful? Okay. But why is that? Why do you think that should be one of the characteristics of God?
trust is almost like it's knowledge based, it's a wisdom based, right? Where you look up to be the person who has the wisdom.
Okay. Is it always knowledge based? Because let's say, you're just a child and someone says, I'm your daddy or I'm your mom. But they're really not. There's, you're adopted. Or maybe someone just picked you up off the street or something, found you there. So I'm not saying someone would do that to you, Master. I'm sure you were a very nice, beautiful baby. But, okay, well, that's you. I'm not assuming. Okay. Do you think God should be truthful, Mr. Seraphine? God shouldn't lie? Why?
Not sure.
Maybe it causes people pain. God enjoys that. It causes confusion and chaos, and God likes that. So God tells you there's an afterlife, and there really isn't one. Promises, he makes all these big promises. Oh yeah. Doesn't matter which religion you believe in. Great banquet in the sky. Whatever you want, how you want to vision. Seven virgin. Eternal bliss. Okay, think that monkey? I'll let you do that, but really, you don't have a soul, you're going nowhere. Don't go anywhere. Thanks a lot. And it pleases him to do that. It's funny. Have you ever seen people get joy out of doing that to people? Revenge is the expression. Passion for revenge. Which card did you use? The solitaire? You never figure out how to play solitaire. Now it's solitary anyway, so that's works all the room. What rational basis or even experiential basis, Mr. McKillop, do you have for assuming that a God should be truthful?
The world's thought is supposed to be.
Yeah, by other human beings, right? Yeah. How would they know that God is truthful? No, they don't know. They hope. They're passing their trust onto you, their faith onto you. Yeah, trust in God. God will help you. You can get cancer. All of a sudden, God doesn't seem to be busy. You're trying to call Microsoft, a big corporation, get the AI. What really bugs me is you get the AI where they have a little like typing in the background. You ever get that? They make it seem like, it's a fake person, it's AI. They have a little person typing on a keyboard, sound of a keyboard. You ever encounter that? No? Well, this is hell. Like, that's really that's deception at this point. I know you're not a human. Then I know you're not sitting there typing on a computer what I just told you. So, yeah, don't blow smoke in my face and tell me citizens. Okay. I don't know. I believe it. I take it as true. I don't know that you can, I think rationally, maybe you could prove it if what I said before about sacred writings and about the sacred and ultimate reality, that through religion, human beings make contact with ultimate reality. Religion is a tool, the sacred is a pathway, a doorway to ultimate reality. Okay. And if ultimate reality is personal, it's a personal God. And I've mentioned this before, a personal relationship should be, I hope, based on truth, like friendship or just whatever, it's based on truth. Otherwise, you end the relationship. I think I've said this before, You find out your friend keeps lying to you. You can never trust her. The relationship suffers. Maybe you still say she's my friend, but can't trust a word she says. That part's broken. The relationship, it's an encounter is a relationship. What are you encountering in these sacred writings? The sacred, which leads us to ultimate reality. So if God is not truthful, how can you have any sort of personal relationship with him? You can't trust a thing he says. Some of it may be true, but some of it he may be deceiving you for some reason that only God knows. You may not even know why God wants to do it. He just does it. which may mean a number of things. It may mean that God is a good God who sometimes is not so good. Maybe he's a mixture of good and evil. He's good sometimes, but he has his, bad points. Maybe he's an imperfect, perfectly good God. He's not all-knowing, Mr. McMaster, so he tells you what he does know truthfully, and the other stuff he makes guesses, which may be wrong, and they seem like deception, but it's just he doesn't know, but he's giving you an idea. It could be that God is evil. The goodness is not part of being a God. So lying is part of his nature, to deceive, to use the truth to deceive, to twist it. Some religions believe in that. God, we call them demons in Christianity, but in other religions, Hinduism, they're called Ashura. They're just bad gods. They're gods, you worship them, just don't get in their way and don't trust them. A person has to uncover himself to you. You may think I'm this way, but I'm not. Revelation, yes. Uncovering. Revelo, to unveil. Veil, to unveil, to uncover. To disclose. Okay, take off your clothes. You're disclosing, okay? But uncovering. Unless another person, and only the other person can do that for you. You can't make the other person do it. You communicate or you disclose yourself, something about who and what you are. And so we see this in the sacred writings of the Bible. God, am I going to get into that? Anyways, God discloses himself to a certain group of human beings, the people of Israel. Okay, so the object of faith is revelation for us. It's revelation. God uncovers himself. He tells us what he is. Because that's the only way you can really know. You can also see how he acts. You can see how God acts. Like with any person, you can see what the person does. If the person is a hypocrite and tells you one thing but is always doing the other sort of thing, well, this person's not trustworthy. You can't trust a word he says. But if someone tells you, I am going to tell you the truth, I am truthful. You might think I'm not, but I am. I'm telling you the truth. You either trust me or you don't, but you'll find out. You'll find out later if what I say is true. And so that's what revelation is. It's the uncovering of God, but especially his will, what he wants. What are his choices? What choices matter to him as a person? How the world should be and how people should act in it. How the world that I believe he created should be, not necessarily the way it is now and how it works, and how people should act in it. Not how people actually do act in it, how they should. So the idea is that God intervenes in some way to tell humans what is the purpose of life and what are fulfilling actions. And faith, trust, is my response to that intervention. And so that response of faith is that encounter of faith, of trust, has been written down in a special way in what we call the Bible. But you can see the struggle even in the Bible, Mr. McMaster, in some of the early texts of the Old Testament, People are not, sometimes in the Bible, God seems to lie to people. He seems to tell them things that are not true, or tell them to lie and say things that are not true. God seems to do bad stuff to people. Good and evil come from the Lord. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It is the Lord. He will do what he wants to. Okay, these are expressions. Typically, people take these expressions of faith in God and trust and whatever. But they also show the belief of the people that, God is God and, I guess good and evil come from him because there's good and evil in the world. God can lie if he wants to because he's God, and I'm not, But God, so you see that in the Jews' belief early on, but you also see God having to say, and this is where the revelation comes in. That's not how I am. You think I'm like this. Yes, there is evil in the world, but I'm not the cause of it. Okay, so why is there evil in the world? Well, God doesn't explain that. But the message that he wants to get through is, you keep saying that evil comes from me. It's not from me. I'm all good. Just so you know, I'm not an evil God like the other evil gods people worship. I'm also not a deceiver. I tell you the truth. I'm faithful. You can place your faith in me. I'm like a rock or a mountain that you can, I guess mountains were seen as immovable. So you can place your trust in a mountain or something, or I don't know. But he uses that imagery, metaphors, any metaphors that will help the Jews to understand that, no, you think I might lie to you or make promises to you that I'm not going to keep. That's not the kind of God I am. I don't change my mind. And to show that to you, I got you, Miss Taylor. It's all right. Miss Taylor, it's only like what? It's not even 2 p.m. It's not even the middle of the afternoon. And you're a young woman. I'm the one who should be looking for a nap. I'm 52. I should be the one look on the couch with my kitty cats. How does God prove this to them, though? Okay, you say it, Lord. How do you prove it? Covenant. He says, okay, I will bind myself to you, Jewish people, forever. I'll show you this is true. So he makes an agreement, a binding contract or an agreement, a covenant. Convenio, coming together. Cum means with, venio, to come. We will come together as persons, the person of God and the person of the people of Israel. And I will be your God and you will be my people. And I'll show you how faithful I am. And that's really the story of the Old Testament. Most of the story is about how the Israelites are constantly unfaithful to God. They're constantly throwing their God overboard and worshiping other gods, doing what they want. And God is constantly punishing them, trying to get them to come back. He's showing his faithfulness. It's a record of his faithfulness, and he is trustworthy. Because that's a big question for a lot of people. Can I even trust God? Okay, I'll come back to this on Thursday. God bless you all. I landed here, but I go skip it. Let's take care of this one. Have a good day. Have a good day, people. La da da dee da da da.